From the Alvin and Rosalie Sarachek studio, PBS Kansas presents Kansas Week.
Sedgwick County and the city of Wichita each struggle to manage their budgets. Now, some long-standing services could be on the chopping block. Also, noise and gunfire in downtown Wichita lead to safety concerns. What's the cause and what's the solution? But first, it's been a dramatic whirlwind of a week in presidential politics. We'll hear reaction from Kansas delegates to the Republican National Convention on this edition of Kansas Week. Hello, and thank you for joining us. I'm Jared Cerullo. An attempted assassination, a unified and energized Republican Party, and a president hemorrhaging support from his own party. If you missed one day, you missed a lot this week in the ongoing drama of the U.S. presidential race. More Democratic leaders came forward to ask President Biden to drop out of the race. He remained defiant as he was then diagnosed with COVID-19 on Wednesday and is now off the campaign trail. Meanwhile, Republican nominee Donald Trump got a rousing response from delegates at the Republican convention. He accepted his party's nomination 5 days after being shot by a sniper at a campaign rally. KAKE's Pilar Pedraza talked with Kansas delegates in Milwaukee who noticed major security changes at the convention on day one.
The events of the past weekend really have unsettled everything. I mean, it's what everybody's talking about. And none of the previous conventions I've attended have had anything like that in the run-up to the convention.
And Kansas Attorney General Chris Kobach knows his political conventions. This is his fifth one. Much like Deanne Graham from Sedgwick County, it's her fifth as well. Both of them have noticed something different, despite the Secret Service saying it wasn't going to change security plans after Saturday's attempted assassination.
There is a difference. In past conventions, there was never a security officer on the bus of each delegation as they come into and out of the convention site.
You don't walk a single block without seeing a dozen or 2 dozen officers, whether it's Secret Service or if it's local police officers or Sheriff Department, National Guard. I feel very safe here.
And they expect more changes as politicians rush to update their speeches, taking into account last weekend's events.
We in America can disagree about everything from energy policy to education, but let's just disagree in a friendly way.
I think that's what makes our country so great, is that we can all think differently, believe differently, vote differently, but we can still be friends and respect one another.
For some like Deanne, it's made watching the national conventions more important than ever.
I think it's really important for viewers to tune in and to listen to the speeches, to listen to what the message is. I think it's just really important that we learn as much as we can and then exercise that right to vote.
And here to talk about this and some of the week's other big stories, I'm pleased to welcome Wichita Eagle Opinion editor Dion Leffler, Harvey County Now managing editor Adam Strunk, Times Sentinel newspaper's co-owner and managing editor Travis Mounts, and owner and chief political strategist at Cato Consulting, Ben Davis. Ben, I'll start with you. You've been a delegate, I understand, to the Republican National Convention. You attended this week. Yep. What did you come away with from the
Well, I wasn't a delegate, but I did attend this week, and it was really a tremendous time. As you can imagine, as the reports have come out, I mean, it was a really energizing moment. I think our party is united. The Republican Party is united in a way that I've not seen it, at least in the recent years. And I think that all the events leading up to last Saturday, but of course last Saturday, which seemed to be kind of the consummation in a very strange way of what's gone on, has led to a rebel convention. And I even think we saw that last night in former President Trump's speech. He seemed to be a little bit more subdued, maybe a little bit kinder or nicer than maybe sometimes he normally is, or so how people perceive him. But there was a lot of energy going into the convention and a lot of energy coming out. People are really excited for November. Yeah,
it seemed like there was definitely a unity and a change in his attitude. For sure.
Absolutely. Well, I would highlight one thing in particular. The party's platform has made a couple of changes. Some changes maybe to the dissatisfaction of some like myself who would argue for a little bit more of a stronger pro-life stance. But we're not letting some of those changes, as disappointing as they may be, get in the way of party unity. I think all Republicans are serious about winning in November and presenting a very unified front to make sure that we get President Trump across the line, no matter who the nominee is on the other side. But I think that was very well understood, and everybody was excited to do that.
And Adam, I'll move over to you from a media standpoint. What did you think in covering the race? Did you notice any changes?
Well, our newspaper office, the building we bought, used to be the old GOP office for the county, and so I did have a couple people come in looking for Trump signs in the last few days. But outside of that, I mean, I was at a huge community festival when the news broke, and I think it was just apprehension. And it was not just apprehension on the welfare, it was just apprehension on where are we going to go with this in the next few months? How is this going to fall? How is this going to play out? What's going to happen? There's a ton of uncertainty about this election, which I don't think any of us have all of the answers.
Yeah, it's definitely been, Dion, one of the most controversial, for lack of a better phrase, but definitely one of the most divisive. But now, since this has happened, the assassination attempt, it seems like the Republican Party is trying to join more people together and get those middle-of-the-road voters, possibly. Do you see that?
Well, you know, it was interesting because former President Trump's speech started out very, sounding a tone of unity, but then it veered off, and it went on way too long, and it, it veered off into the old, into classic Trump. Was my read on it. If he had told the story of being shot at and then basically sat down, I think he would have been in a lot better position. It's, like I say, it was unity, and then it got disunity. So,
Travis, do you agree?
Yeah. I mean, as I look at this, I'm kind of looking at it against where we were 4 years ago. And right now, the Republicans not only have unity, they've got all the enthusiasm. And in a way, you would almost feel like you would have that instead on the party that is defending the White House. And instead, 4 years ago, I think part of the reason why President Trump didn't get reelected was there was not the same level of enthusiasm within his own party versus when he first got elected. And that pales in comparison to where the Democrats are at this very moment. And, we joked before we went on air, has Biden resigned yet? I mean, that's the state of where the Democratic Party is right now. Is that about the only unifying factor is that most Democrats want him to step down.
Yeah.
And where they go from there, I don't think anybody really has a good answer.
I woke up this morning to the New York Times and more Democrats seem to be getting on the bandwagon to call for President Biden to step down, and sources are saying or indicating that he may do so within the next 72 hours or so and open up a convention to a nomination for anybody. Who could that be? Do you know, Ben?
I mean, as I understand, whatever the rumors are, it's going to, only President Biden is going to endorse an open convention. I would imagine Kamala would be kind of at the head of that, but according to some sources, he's not going to endorse her, just an open convention. So I think it could throw the convention into a kind of a means of chaos. Then what happens with the campaign funds that have been raised? My understanding is she's the only one who really could use them. So if they nominate someone else, do they have to unravel all that and re-raise again? Thinking about kind of bringing up an entire nationwide campaign apparatus, I'm sure there will be a lot of overlap, but then a lot they'd have to start fresh in a very short amount of time. And if there's one thing I think that the American people, after everything we went through with COVID and then what we've seen over the last 4 years, is that I think the American people are tired of chaos, or what they perceive to be chaos. And if the major party that occupies the White House now is perceived to be in complete disarray and chaos, I do not think that that instills any measure of confidence for those voters going in November that they're going to need to win.
Dion, there's been talk about Gavin Newsom as well, the California governor.
Yeah, there's a lot of candidates that could emerge from this process. I can really pick conventions. I'm going to the Democratic National Convention this year. I'll be covering it for the McClatchy Corporation. And the last one I went to was 2008 when Barack Obama was nominated. So that was historic. This is going to be historic, and I am really, I'm really looking forward to it. I'm gonna have to be on my toes for this one, but it's, there's several candidates. Gretchen Whitmer is another candidate who's been possibly mentioned. If Kamala Harris remains on the ticket as vice president, then the problem with funding that you were talking about, that would not be in play, as I understand it.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it's just, I mean, I've looked at the polls, and the best candidate that the Democrats have is Michelle Obama. And she led in the polls. She's the only candidate that leads in the polls against Trump, and by 11 points. That's crushing. So if they can convince her to get off the bench and get in the game, this could get wild.
And Adam, you were agreeing with that when he brought up Michelle Obama.
Yeah, I mean, we're all looking at the polls and watching every day and seeing how that would change. But it's kind of we were talking about like enthusiasms at an all-time low. I think that for a lot of the people within the party, a lot of the people who are independents or on the sides who, don't agree with the Project 2025 vision of the United States as being presented to us, I think that once you do get a candidate in there who is maybe a little younger, maybe a little more energetic, who looks a little bit more like the electorate, who's able to articulate a lot of these policies that Biden might not be popular, but a lot of the policies they've instigated have pulled really well, I think you'll kind of see that, that enthusiasm change a little bit.
All right.
So we'll see.
Well, one of the things too that I've been hearing throughout this campaign is that people are tired of seeing the same two guys, the same two older men, with the same old rhetoric.
And how differently would this whole situation be if things had gone a little bit different on Saturday? I mean, you talk the potential chaos.
Yeah.
I mean, it's horrific to think about just how disastrous all of this could be going.
Yeah. All right, we'll move on. That is certainly a spirited discussion for sure. A 15-year-old boy was arrested this week after a shooting in downtown Wichita at a park. Cake's Jocelyn Schifferdecker shows us it's just the latest case of danger and chaos downtown that has police on alert and looking for answers.
Nafsker Park is a popular area in the city of Wichita. You can often find people walking around the various shops, having a picnic, or meeting for coffee with a loved one. But at night, the Wichita Police Department says it's a completely different scene.
They're out there meeting up, doing burnouts, drag racing, spinning tires, causing a disturbance.
There are several apartment complexes just across the street from the park. WPD says it's gotten multiple complaints from the people who live here.
It is an issue, and it's something that we are looking as a police department to address.
The department says it's going to have additional units out near the park the next several weeks so it can keep an eye on the area.
We will have a zero tolerance. Officers will respond and take appropriate and immediate action.
Monday night, Wichita police responded to a shooting in the area. Police say a 64-year-old man and his wife were walking in the park when they got in a verbal argument with a group of young people. The argument turned physical, leading to several people following the couple to a nearby parking lot. That's when police say a 15-year-old male shot the man. The teen has been arrested and the victim was taken to a local hospital. Police say they believe this was an isolated event, but it shows why they want people out of the area.
We understand that some of these type of meetups can cause a broader or larger problem or issue.
In downtown Wichita, Jocelyn Schifferdecker, Cake News on your side.
And I'll start with you, Dion. This is an interesting topic because Nafsker Park, anybody who knows the history of Nafsker Park, and you're a longtime Wichitan, I assume you do, Nafsker Park used to be much different than what it is today. It used to be full of trees, fenced, locked up, and now the city of Wichita changed it a few years ago, opened up Nafsker Park to become a wide open area to bring more people in, but now we're talking about keeping people out again.
Yeah, I mean, if you're here long enough, it always cycles. It just, I mean, my office used to be about a block from that park, and there's always been problems there. There's been problems there ever since it turned into Old Town. And, I have on my desk an Old Town bullet that was fired that I found in front of our. It had hit the wall of our office of our building, and you know, the idea behind the Navsker Park redesign. Well, there was a couple of ideas. Mostly, it was to facilitate the development of everything around it, but the idea was that it would be open enough that law enforcement could just drive by and keep an eye on things there. It was previously a place where homeless people gathered and hung out. And so now they've moved up to 2nd Street. And I don't know, to get back to this point where it's like, you know, can't go in the park at night, it's...
You know, and especially with the stadium, the arena right there close as well. Adam, you're from a smaller area, but you know, you don't have to deal with those homeless things and shootings quite as much, but what's your take?
Well, I mean, my take is that there's always going to be these kind of problems. If you have a place where people want to gather, you're always going to have that. It sounds like they are taking some steps to address it. But I mean, homelessness, and we're not talking about homelessness, this issue, but like homelessness is something that's present throughout Kansas. Like there's a ton of unhoused people throughout the state, and in rural Kansas it's a really big problem because there's a lack of services. Yeah.
Travis, anything to add with Navsker Park downtown and safety?
Yeah, it's just interesting to see, you know, like Dion said, that you kind of come back to some of the same problems. And I mean, what it points to is that a lot of these issues have much more complex and much deeper causes. And so, you know, a superficial change, you know, wiping the surface and building a new park doesn't address the causes of violence, the causes of homelessness. You still have these much deeper problems which take a lot more money and a lot more work, and you can't solve them with a single solution. And so, you know, you're trying to fix deeper problems with, you know, window dressing solutions.
Yeah. And Ben, it has always been a city ordinance that you can't be in a city park after 10 p.m., I think.
Yeah, and I don't necessarily know if it has anything to do with the park or changing the park, but I mean, I guess I'll just be a little old-fashioned here. I wonder where the parents are. Look, I think this is potentially an opportunity. If we've got a lot of young people running around at night, this could be a really great opportunity for churches or maybe other civic groups to say, hey, you know, this is what young people do. Young people, when I was a teenager, I used to go around in the summertime out with my friends, fortunately not getting into any type of trouble, but I mean, young people want to be out. Maybe there are civic groups, churches, organizations that could go out and engage these kids, channel some of that energy and things into evening activities or after-hour activities that would maybe help distance us from that. I don't necessarily think that the location or you know, a lack of government services necessarily has to be the solution. I do think that these are complex problems. Maybe they've got parents that are working night shifts and leaving them at home alone. I think this is an area where you can see civic organizations, churches, the community step up and try to provide solutions and maybe have a real impact on these kids' lives.
Yeah.
Well, there's maybe no reason why the city government couldn't do this too. I mean, they own the park. It's their park. You know, I mean.
You mean in terms of like policing it better?
Well, in terms of having activities. Supervise the activity in the park.
Yeah, there could be that too. This could be a you know, kind of a public-private partnership that could, I mean, no telling what could come of something like this if we were to get creative. What I don't want to see is I don't want to see more of just a heavy-handed police solution or something like that. I really do think that this could provide, hopefully, an opportunity for us to engage young people at a deeper, more meaningful level, rather than to say, well, here's a big crime problem, so how do we just start to tamp it out? I mean, I want to deal with crime, but I think, I mean, maybe the police could even engage in some of that activity in a constructive way.
Yeah. And Dion, there's no question at all since the changes to Navsker Park downtown that activity has increased there.
Well, I'm not sure if it has or not, to tell you the truth. I mean, you had a lot of activity in the park when it was primarily the hangout spot for the homeless population. And they're still doing their activity. They're just doing it 2 blocks north. The parking lot at our or the parking garage at our at the location where we were at Meade, I mean, it just became the de facto place where Navsker Park kind of moved up to that area because it's right near some of the social services.
Tents kind of moved a little bit down the road a little bit, pretty much. Yeah. So. All right. Anything else to add, Adam?
Yep, I think they got it covered.
Okay. All right, we'll move on. Our last topic today. The Sedgwick County Commission and Wichita City Council are both considering cuts to balance their budgets. The county is looking to slash arts and recreation funding in order to cut property taxes. The city of Wichita considering a number of cuts as well. One of the most recent issues to come up is what to do about the city golf courses. Cake's Derek Lytle explains.
Running water, mud puddles, leaks, brown fairways at Sim Golf Course. Blaine Williams has played Wichita's 4 public courses for 35 years. He says it's time to address irrigation problems.
It's a huge issue. We've gone to Heston and McPherson,
Sierra Hills.
Yeah. Anywhere else where we can, you get a nicer course. When you hit a ball in a fairway, you like to be able to be on grass instead of dirt.
A complaint the director of golf for the city of Wichita, Jesse Kaufman, hears all the time. Without irrigation replacements, he says the courses would be forced to close.
We have very old irrigation systems. The one at Sim is almost 40 years old. The average life expectancy of an irrigation system is between 20 and 25 years.
Vice Mayor Maggie Ballard wants to work into the budget that costs for an irrigation replacement at Sim, and then focus on fixing the final 3 courses.
I suggested putting $1 million for a one-time fee into the CIP for next year to help start with the irrigation here at Sims.
Councilmember Dalton Glasscock is not convinced this is feasible. He says they are already in need to find a way to cut $12.4 million from an overstretched budget.
I will not support additional money added to the CIP, so I'm interested of where we'd be reallocating funds from the current CIP toward the golf irrigation fund.
The director of golf says the courses profited $6 million in 2023. Upgrades would begin with Arthur B. Sim Golf Course and address each of the next 3 every 2 years.
And you know, Ben, it's interesting with the city of Wichita, the Golf Enterprise Fund, the city's golf system is supposed to support itself. It's not supposed to be supported by tax dollars, but we're having problems here.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a whole range of different problems that I think these things have been around for quite some time. I know some people think that they just appeared yesterday, but this is something that I think some people have been in the know and talking about for at least a couple of different years. And I think the city council and the community actually is going to have to make some really difficult decisions in terms of, are we going to raise taxes, the mill levy, what's going to be cut? My understanding is that the proposal has gone before the city council in 4 different tiers. They're trying to figure out, and then they're going to open it up to the community and let the community decide what are the major priorities that we want to do, which I think is the right approach.
Yeah. And Adam, there's a couple of issues here with the county, Sedgwick County. They're talking about lowering the mill levy, but raising sales taxes to cover that. Any thoughts on that?
Sure. Well, I don't want to jump away from the golf course thing right away. Like, the city has to ask what the ROI is. Like, what are the rounds playing through? How is this serving the city? Is this opening up golf to people who wouldn't be able to afford golf? Is this people who are just playing a nice course that's a little bit cheaper? And what's the return on the investment? And if there's not a return on the investment, or if there's other services that could be funded, like, I think it's up to the community to come forward and say, hey, we want to make an investment to fix up this golf course, because golf courses are expensive to maintain for cities. Switching to the taxes, I mean, that's the real question. The county's talking about lowering it like 0.3 mils, or what was lower. But I mean, that's still not lowering taxes. Like, most people's taxes are going to increase. They are lowering the mill levy. And I think that's something that people miss out in the conversation, is like, your taxes don't go up because your property valuations go up. Your taxes go up based on the mill levy your governing body set. And so now the county wants to transfer that over to sales tax. Maybe that's good, maybe that's bad. That's what the county can decide. But you know, there's a lot of stuff going on with the budget, and I think sometimes we don't always talk super honestly about it.
Yeah. And Dion, the city is tackling their issue as well. They just had a vote that of raising the R&R, the revenue neutral rate, that even though the mill levy stays the same, the city will take in more money. State law requires the city to notify the public. And when that happens, it seems that most people think that's a tax increase. Well,
you know, it is a tax increase, but you know, it's part of the price we pay for living in a civilized city. That whole state law, I was there when they passed that, and it really struck me as sort of a silly thing to do. You cannot run any government agency by allocating the same amount of money that you had last year. We tried that with the state under Sam Brownback, and it was a disaster. And it just, you know, trying to push that disaster down to the local level is just, it was a badly thought out policy.
And my recollection is that the whole R&R idea came out of the state legislature trying to force cities and counties to have a vote if their taxes were going to go up in terms of actual dollars. And of course, counties and cities screamed about that, in part because of how little they control in terms of how valuations are done or things like that. You would have had to been doing significant mill levy reductions just to keep your dollars even. And when that didn't come through, the legislature said, well, we've got to have something. And so they came up with what is essentially just a toothless requirement that forces them to do another public notice on top of the budget, which in and of itself will show you if your taxes are going up or not. And have yet another public hearing that most of the public isn't going to show up for anyway. Yeah, it's a couple of extra hoops that don't change anything.
Right.
Oh, sorry, Dion.
Well, you can't make people, you know, you can't make people work without raises year after year after year, and that's what this is. I mean, that's what revenue neutral is.
Cost of other goods go up, yeah.
But on the other end, like, what happens when your property valuations exceed what the actual inflation rate is? Like, I mean, we've seen this in Harvey County 2 or 3 years in a row, where our property valuations, what our cities and governments are taking in, those amounts and those increases on people are much higher than what inflation was. Like, I think everybody agrees we're going to have to pay more for services, but there's also a question of, like, how much more?
Yeah, and that's a decision that has to be made by the local government entity.
And Ben, one council member, Brandon Johnson on the Wichita City Council, says he's openly advocating for a mill levy increase, saying it's been 32 years since the city of Wichita has not increased its mill levy, and he's openly calling for it to be raised.
Yeah, and I think that this is going to be, they're going to have to strike a balance, and everybody's going to strike that balance a little bit differently. And just speaking from a conservative standpoint, there's a little bit of a dilemma here. I don't want to see my taxes raised. I don't think anybody does, you know, no matter where they are on the political spectrum. But then I think it also asks the question, what are the core services of government? What are we paying taxes for? Maybe this brings us back full circle to the golf course question, because it's like, well, I don't want my tax dollars going to maintain golf courses that I don't even use. And we're talking about, you know, water issues with Cheney Lake already going below the normal level there and everything else. I think, you know, we're paying for safety, we're paying for services that keep, you know, city government going.
I'm going to have to cut you off. I apologize.
Yeah, sorry. Go ahead.
We're out of time. I want to thank Dion Leffler of the Wichita Eagle, Adam Strunk from Harvey County Now, Travis Mounts from the Times Sentinel newspapers, and of course Ben Davis as well. Thank you for joining us. Have a great day.